All right, and we'll go live in three, two, one. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Mindful Muscle Podcast. Paul Klingen, your host here. And today I got Jake Parker, one of the E4 Fit Method coaches, jumping on to answer your guys' questions to give you a little bit more clarity on things you run into from a training, nutrition, recovery, and even mindfulness standpoint. So, Jake, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Paul. Excited to be here. Get into some questions.
Absolutely. We'll dive right into it. Couple just housekeeping things. So this is Q&As based off of stuff that we get from clients or questions that we get in our Facebook group. So if you want to ask these questions, you can go to the Mindful Muscle Facebook group. Link's going to be down below. Join the group. You can also get a Mindful Muscle mini course, access to that, where that's going to dive into even deeper topics around training, setting your macros, sleep, recovery, how to get your metabolism revved up and going. And so that's where you can go and ask questions and get them answered on the podcast. So definitely go in and join in there. And then one other quick note, if you're in the Seattle-based area, I recently partnered with a company called Fuller Nutrifuel, and they're a meal prep company. And you can get all your meals sent to your door every Sunday, every Wednesday, delicious, nutritious meals. The menu is going to rotate every single week, but you can use my discount code Paul15 to get 15% off your first order. And it's something that I definitely recommend to clients, definitely recommend to anyone that's on the go, hates meal prepping, constantly finds themselves ordering DoorDash, ordering Uber Eats. And this is just a super easy, done for you, literally delivered to your doorstep, and takes 5 minutes to make. So definitely check that out. That link will be below as well. But without further ado, Jake, let's get into it and get into some of these questions. Ready to rock?
I'm ready.
Cool. So question number one, I just wrapped up 4 weeks doing this exercise program. What happens next? And just for a little bit of context, this person had just finished their first month in the program, and they're just like, so what now from like a workout standpoint? So take it away.
Yeah. So the biggest thing that Paul and I are going to focus on is once you complete a month of workouts, we're going to switch things for our clients. And we recommend people switching things around a little bit, but you don't want to go a full 180 switch every single time. So for example, if you were doing like some RDLs, barbell RDLs, maybe you move to something like a staggered dumbbell RDL or something like that. We're going to make a couple of small changes. And that's how I look at my own periodization and programming too. You want to try to focus on being in the same movements for a period of at least a few months to really see progression. So it's going to keep you more engaged and more entertained. If you switch things a little bit every single month, you don't want to be doing the same movement pattern week after week after week, just because it's going to start to become repetitive. And there can be an issue with adherence and compliance just based on, I don't want to go and do this again. So it's the right mix of changing things around a little bit to stay entertained, but also keeping in the same movement pattern, because by doing that for a period of months, that's how you are going to see sustained changes. One of the biggest things that people run into as far as myths that perpetuate the fitness industry is you want to change things up to shock the muscle or confuse the muscle. And really, that's kind of the antithesis of what you want to go for. Because like I said, unless you spend a period of 2 to 3 months really focusing on enhancing your squat pattern and movement, that's the only real way that you're going to see changes and start to change your body. If you're changing things around too often, you're not going to give your body time to adjust and really get the most out of a movement.
Yeah. I mean, all really good points. The muscle confusion one is always one that cracks me up, because it's like, it's not like you're pulling a magic trick over your muscles' eyes. They're smart. The reason why you're either more sore or feeling it a little bit differently is it was a different type of training. So something that pops to mind is maybe you are lifting weights and then you go do Pilates. Pilates is great for mobility, and it's going to create so much time under tension. That's going to be a different type of training, but it's not like you're confusing your muscles. Or you might just have not worked out in a really long time, and that's why you're sore. Or you might have done a ton of volume. It was likely junk volume, but you just did a ton of stuff that was maybe new, and that caused you to feel sore. So there's a really strategic and smart way to go about targeting and training the muscles for hypertrophy, for strength, but confusing them is not it. And so when we're looking at a training program, we want to have things that stack upon each other. And so at the end of that 4 weeks, to what you were talking about, if we're just jumping from program to program to program, month one, you're focusing on strength. Month two, you're running a half marathon. Month three, you're doing a ton of Pilates, yoga, whatever, right? That's like semester one, you're going to be a doctor. Semester two, you're going to be a teacher. Semester three, you're going to be a lawyer. you're going to get to the end of the year and they're going to be like, sweet, you have no credits and you're not ready for grad school. And it's like, well, why not? It's like, because you've been jumping around. You got to really focus in on one thing. That said, we also want to make sure that mentally you're there. So that's where the novelty, the variation without change is what we call it, will be implemented to where it's like, all right, I'm doing a lunge variation, but it's a different tempo. It's a different rep scheme. It's a different piece of equipment, and it's differently placed in your program. That's where it's going to feel fresh and new. But if you're just jumping around, right, that's like it's like homie hopping. That's like going on 50 dates in a month, right? You're never going to get
Mhm.
a chance to actually build like a deep connection with someone. So that might be why you're running into an issue if you're just like treating your workouts like the bachelor or bachelorette.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point too, is the seeing a workout as successful doesn't always come down to things that you can see. So, for example, people like to be sore, people like to sweat, and those can be good indicators, but those shouldn't be the ends that you're trying to get to. That doesn't necessarily mean you had an effective workout. Focusing on improving specific ranges, squats, presses, things like that, that are compound for a number of months in a row, that's how you can change your body. And whether or not you get sweaty and you get sore, that is more of a byproduct. And if you like that, that's another thing that you can include in your training. Maybe you do some sort of a finisher exercise or some sort of an AMRAP at the end if you like to have that mental push, that cardio aspect of it. But those certainly aren't things that you should try to gear or gauge a successful workout around.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think back to like when I played college baseball, even I was constantly changing my swing around. And when you look at things like strength or getting really good at something, you can't just change constantly. And it might sound boring at first to do a reverse lunge 6 months in a row, but you're going to be so much better at it. You're going to be so much stronger. Your skill is going to just skyrocket, same way as your skill with a golf swing or a baseball swing or a tennis swing or basketball shot is going to change. But if every single month you're like, all right, I'm shooting like Kobe today. All right, now I'm shooting like MJ. Okay, no, now I'm going to shoot like Sean Marion, which that's super meta. That's a brutal
Mhm.
shot form. So don't follow him. But I know you're a basketball guy, so I wanted to throw that one
Mhm.
out for you, Jake. Cool. Next question. In the gym, on some of my lower body exercises, I have trouble hanging onto the weights with my hands, and it also kind of hurts. Ouch. I feel like my legs, glutes could have been lifted more. I think they just meant like they could have lifted more with them, but my hands couldn't hold the heavier weight. Will that get better with time? Any suggestions for that?
Yeah. So the biggest thing here is I would say for the first few months or so, your strength training or even coming back to it, you want to maximize what you can do without any equipment. So just doing things like I think the biggest example here is something that I've ran into a lot is I can deadlift a lot more weight if I'm using some equipment like straps, like a belt. And so that stuff can be useful because that's going to help me to overload my hamstrings and my glutes and my back more. But I don't want to become reliant on that stuff too, because if you become too reliant on equipment, that can lead to further inadequacies or imbalances. And it can also eventually lead to potential injuries too, if you really become weak in a certain capacity. But I think the biggest thing to note here is, like I said, after a few months, when you begin to gain a lot of strength and gain a lot of proficiency in a lift, then it might make sense to start adding equipment to make up for your weak spots. So I like the example of the deadlift because using straps or even for rows too are something that people will see a lot of benefit on because a lot of times the limiting strength is in your hands and your grip. If you use something like straps, that's going to allow you to really overload the back, the hamstrings, the glutes more efficiently. So that's one thing that you could rely on. But again, you don't want to become too dependent on it because that can create its own issues. So I think a good rule of thumb is I'll usually lift equipped 50% of the time, and 50% of the time I won't.
Yeah, no, I think equipment is a great example of that. Whenever I get these kind of questions, I always want to address with someone, all right, what is like the biggest rate limiter? And a big one for me is if I'm doing like a Bulgarian split squat, right? Back foot's rear foot elevated on a bench or something. Eventually those dumbbells get too heavy and my forearms are about to explode. I feel like Thor and I'm about to just like shoot lightning out of my fingers before I actually like get to a point where my legs are fatigued. So that's an example where I would trade dumbbells for a barbell because I can put that weight on my
Mhm.
back, hands are free, but there becomes a stability issue. So you just got to understand like, is it my grip? Is it my stability? Is it my core strength? Is it my cardiovascular system? If you're, doing reverse lunges, but you did 50 box jumps right before, right? You're not going to get to muscle fatigue because your heart's about to explode out of your throat because that's the rate limiter. Um, Core strength mobility is another really good one for shoulders. Like a lot of people are stronger than their mobility will let them because if they push through it, they're going to hurt themselves. And then I always say mind is just a big rate limiter. So many people stop like 5 reps short because like, oh yeah, like, that was hard, that was good, that was tough. But then that's where I say like if Michael B. Jordan or insert whatever celebrity crush that you have is watching you like every single rep and they're like, come on, give me 2 more. Like you got like 5 more in you. So those are all things to just keep in mind. Specific to this question, Jake, I think you handled it perfectly. The legs, the glutes can lift more, but you just got to figure out what gear do I need, what setup do I need, what piece, specific equipment do I need, so that I can work around the weakest link.
And another thing is, Paul and I were just talking about books today. One of the ones we mentioned was David Goggins' book. And the thing I always think about when I think of David Goggins is he's famous for saying that when you feel like you're ready to quit physically, you're about 40% of your total capacity. So a good skill to practice is really just getting into that second wind, that second burst of energy that we all have access to, but it kind of has to be one of those things where you go to another place and you really dig deep down. And I think the benefit of that, and Paul would probably agree, is I like physical training because it reminds me how I can push myself mentally in other areas. So if I go and have a great workout and I bust out 2 or 3 more reps than I thought I could because I went to a different place mentally, that might make me more empowered to feel more confident at work, to feel more confident in the dating world. So again, this is where it's not just about fitness, it's really about changing all the aspects of your life and just changing the way that you think about things and approach things.
Yeah, 100%. Next question. What do I do about not working out during my vacation? It feels stressful to try and find a gym. Our hotel doesn't have one for a week, but I'm also worried about gaining 10 pounds on this trip. And I really don't want that.
Yeah. So the first thing I would address here is just the comment about the weight issue. So oftentimes you will see a jump on the scale after you go on vacation. But what you have to realize is that less than half of that weight, say if you really do gain 6, 7, 8 pounds, is fat gain, probably more like a quarter of it. A lot of that weight is going to come from you're probably eating more carbs. So carbs create glycogen. You're going to have more glycogen in your muscles. B, you're probably going to have just more volume of food in your body. So that can create more weight. And C, you're going to have more salt retention too, which is going to make you hold more water. So that is where you can see that big jump in the scale. So realizing first and foremost that weight gain that you see is mostly not going to be from fat. But B, trying to limit the amount of calories that you're taking in and balancing workouts. A couple rules that I use for myself, and I'm not typically someone who likes to try to work out unless it's really convenient when I'm on vacation. Something that I like to think of there is maintenance of muscles is a lot easier than building. So if you just take a week off, you're not going to atrophy all of the muscle that you gained over the past few months. It might feel like that mentally. You might be scared of that, but in reality, you are probably not going to lose any muscle. You might lose 10%, which you can easily gain back in a week or two, as far as strength, as far as muscle. But 2 rules that I like to use for myself when I'm on vacation to kind of stay active is try to walk wherever you can, especially if you're somewhere where it's nice or that you want to go sightseeing. Walking is a good way to keep your body active and keep that calorie burn somewhat high. And when it comes to food, I'm not someone, again, who likes to track my food very closely when I'm on vacation because I'm kind of in it for the hedonic pleasure of the food. So usually one way that I'll govern myself is to just focus on eating 2 meals a day. So maybe I have a big brunch and a big midday meal, or maybe I fast until noon and then have a big lunch and a big dinner. Having 2 meals a day can allow you to eat a lot more calorically dense meals and try the things you want to try without feeling like you're overly restricted. If you go and you're having 3 big meals a day, that's going to be a lot harder to control overall, like 3 meals at a restaurant versus just having two. Like I said, it gives you more leeway to try different things that are going to be more cutting into your caloric budget.
Yeah, 100%. I call this heartbeat habits. Just like your heartbeat doesn't stop. If it does, you got problems. If these habits stop, that's how it's going to be really hard to stay on track when you do get back or even just on this vacation. So those are going to be super simple. Staying hydrated, getting good sleep,
Mm-hmm.
maybe meditating, maybe journaling, uh, eating a high protein diet. Every time you sit down, just be like, cool, where's my protein? Where's my 30, 40, 50 grams? That's something that's very much in your control, even if you are on vacation or eating out. Going for walks, like you mentioned, is definitely there. And then to that point, it's like it feels stressful to try and find a gym. One, there's typically like gyms or even classes nearby that you could take. And I think that's like a good solution because again, it is just a week. Go find something that's just going to get you to move your body and hold you over to that next workout if you can't find a gym. One thing I'd say with this too is like if you're doing a program or doing our program and you're living your life one way, then you go on vacation, you become a total Jekyll and Hyde. I think that's also just a sign that there's still some things that need to uproot in terms of how you view your lifestyle, because vacation should be something where it's like relaxing and fun. And if working out and feeling good in your body is relaxing and fun, and you do that normally, you're going to find ways to do that on vacation. And again, it's not to say like, hey, you need to like be extreme. If you're on the beach, be on the beach. If you want to be present on your vacation, be present on your vacation. But I think a lot of people think of this, and this kind of turns into the book Turning Pro, Jake, which I know you've read, but you have how you live your life, and then as soon as you get off the hook, you just like go wild. And I think that's a sign. That book speaks of like amateur traits, and it's basically just a sign that you're not fully committed to making a deeper change. And so that's like, I say that all because you'll know that you're changing how you approach your life and how you think about your health and how you think about personal development when a weekend or when a vacation or when a holiday doesn't completely change how you are on a regular day, on a weekday, on a, not on vacation. Because ultimately, if you're going to sustain the progress that you've made, you want to continue doing that for the next 50 years, right? With different variances and different seasons. But I think that's just like a little context to that as well. And just thinking like your vacation should be something that you still have those heartbeat habits. Go drink, go stay up late, go like to the club or a show or whatever kind of vacation you're on and want to do, totally fine. But there should be some things that like, because you're changing how you approach your life and how you approach your health, like don't stop. If you don't drink a lot at home, but then you go on vacation and drink 7 days straight, like that's a totally different shift. So I like what you said too earlier about like having little gaps where it's like maybe you don't eat breakfast or maybe you have two meals, because I think that does create a little bit more space for what you're having. But then, yeah, the concept of gaining, a ton of weight on vacation, you're not going to lose 10 pounds in a week. You're not going to gain 10 actual pounds in a week. Sometimes just flying and being on an airplane will cause the scale to shift. As soon as you get back on track, you're going to be totally fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool, cool. Next question, diving into a fun nutrition one. How much protein powder is too much?
So as far as protein powder, I think it's a really great thing that pretty much everyone can be including in their diet, because unless you're really committed to eating 3, 4, 5 different servings of protein a day, they're going to come from meat or dairy or some sort of vegan option. It's going to be really difficult to get enough protein. So just about everyone can benefit from having protein. And I think another important note, something that I try to make clients aware of more, is protein powder is sold and marketed as a supplement that you take after your workout. And of course, that was one of the main reasons why it was invented. But to me, it's more important just as a food, something to look at as a food that you eat every day, because it's really just helping you to get more protein on a regular basis. If you work with Paul or I, we'll give you a protein target to hit. You'll notice that if 20, 30, 40 grams of your protein in a day is coming from a supplement, it's super easy to get down and it makes it easier to hit your goal. That being said, how much is too much is going to kind of depend on individuals. But for me, a good rule of thumb is you don't want to go over 3 or 4 scoops. And the reason being, at this point, if you're probably looking at about half your daily protein is coming from protein powder, and you're going to run into one of 2 issues more than likely, which is A, you're going to run into satiety issues and just not feeling full because so much of your food, so much of your protein is coming from something that you're drinking. So it's going to digest really quickly, not leave you feeling as full as, say, 4 or 5 ounces of chicken breast would. And B, we do want to some extent, and this is again something that's very individual, but you're probably going to feel best limiting artificial sweeteners to some extent. If you're someone who has 2 or 3 scoops of protein powder a day, and you go have a diet pop and you have your intra workout or your pre workout that's also artificially flavored. There's nothing inherently wrong with artificial flavors, but it is going to be something that taken in excess every day can start to upset your stomach and can cause some bloating and stuff like that. So those are two big reasons that my rule of thumb would be no more than 3 to 4 scoops of protein per day, or maybe no more than 40% or so of your protein coming from protein powder.
Yeah, no, good rule of thumbs. And I think another thing to remember too is like protein powder is a supplement. It should supplement your diet. If you're
Mm-hmm.
just getting your protein from protein bars and protein powder, you're leaving a lot of minerals, vitamins, and just essential nutrients on the table that you would be getting from whole foods. So it's a supplement, which means it is additive to what you should be doing from a whole food standpoint. So definitely make sure and don't miss that mark with the whole food piece. Bang bang. Next question. Have any tips on how to manage your time slash schedule when you are really busy? This is a deep one, so I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, definitely. So the biggest thing that I have implemented into my life in the last few years that have been very busy, I try to balance career and working out and spending time with my friends and family. So my biggest personal rule is just to use time blocking. And essentially what time blocking is just to estimate and set out time for how long you think tasks are going to take. So if you have a project you want to work on, say I'm going to work on it for 3 hours from 9 a.m. to noon. Or, I mean, obviously, meetings are a way that we time block without even thinking about it. So, Paul and I get on each other's schedules and we put in an hour for this podcast. I do it for stuff like trying to read an hour a day, getting 3 or 4 weightlifting workouts in that take about an hour. I'm actually like on the far end of neurotic about this. Like, I'll time block just about everything. But for me, another person that Paul and I talked about today, we were talking about a lot of books, was Jocko Willink. And one of the things he's famous for saying is discipline equals freedom. So for me, the more disciplined I am with my time blocking and being very specific about how I spend my time, the more I feel free to come up with ideas and be able to be creative and be able to make deep connections with people, because my mind isn't 1,000 different places at once. I know that what's important is going to be on my schedule and I'm going to have made time for it. And if not, I can find time. And another thing is I'll make a time block to reassess every week what my last week was like and what I have planned for my next week, so that I can make sure I'm being most effective with the things I'm prioritizing. So that's how I'd start. That's my big rule, is just to time block.
Yep, definitely. I think when I hear busy, I just think, are you being productive, right? Busy doesn't equal productive. You can go to the gym for 2 hours, but are you productive with that, right? And this is where I go and look initially like what needs to be said no to, because we spend way too much time doing things that aren't important, whether that's social media, watching TV. Maybe you're at work and you're spending times in meetings that you don't need to be spending time on. Maybe you're focusing on tasks that aren't going to drive the needle forward for your specific KPI in your job. Maybe you're spending too much time, just doing stuff that you don't actually want to do. I think that's a big one from a social standpoint, is we feel all this social obligation to go to a happy hour or get dinner with someone, or we run into our parents' friends and we feel like we owe them, a dinner or catch up. And these are just random things, but even just like responding back and having like text conversations or email conversations, we get this fulfillment and dopamine from inbox at zero, or text inbox at zero. And it's like, if 500 people texted you all right now, you simply wouldn't be able to get to them, because it would impact your ability. You would take one, it would take too much time. Like literally, you'd probably lose your fingers. Two, it would impact your ability to do things that are really important. So if you can identify what is your priority, what is really important, everything else, in a way, it's almost like binary. And this is maybe a rigid way for some people to think about it, but the more you can just ultimately think about saying no, and not no because you don't like the person, or no because they're not someone that is valuable to you, but just be like, I have things that are really important to me, my core values, who I want to be, the people around me that I want to be my best for. In order for you to be your most potent self, productive self, you got to say no to the things that are going to drain that from you. So managing your time schedule, to your point, Jake, the time blocking and just like having dedicated times to that, I think is really important. But I think most people, if you were to do an audit, like the IRS came in and did a time audit, they'd be like, hey, we got some problems here. You got 7 hours on TikTok, 12 hours on Netflix. You're doing things that like you don't actually want to do, that give you anxiety because you feel like obligated to do them. You carve all that out. Oh my gosh, so much more white space.
Mm-hmm. And one other big thing I would mention here is I think a concept that comes up a lot for me is the sunk cost fallacy. So essentially what that is if you start a TV show or a book and you don't like it, you don't have to finish it. A lot of times we feel like just because we started something, we have to finish it. And obviously it's important to be someone who follows through, say like on a project you committed to at work or something you told a friend that you'd help them out with. But a lot of times we just feel like we have to finish things just for the sake of finishing them. It's okay to give yourself permission to drop things that aren't serving you anymore. So I think like the book and the TV show is a really good example. I think about that all the time. For me, it's hard to. I spent $15 on a book and it's 300 pages, and I got 50 pages through, and I'm like, oh, I don't like this, but I should probably finish it because I started it and I spent money on it. But your time is worth money too. So not everything comes down to the price. I think arguably what's just as important is you have to look at your own personal time as money, and not only as far as being productive and working, but you have to give yourself time to de-stress and relax. So it's important to not just commit to things just for the sake of committing to them, and realizing that you don't have to finish everything you start if it's not serving you.
Yeah. Yeah. Just if it's not a hell yes, it's okay that if it's a no.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of apply that to everything. Last question. How do you navigate in a community that doesn't understand having athletic goals? This is another tough one.
Yeah. So my first note here would be just to try to be an example. So a lot of people in the fitness industry, Paul and I can attest to this. We want to tell our friends and family all about fitness. We want to share the fitness lifestyle with them. We want to get them on the fitness lifestyle, on the right track. But if you're preaching to people, that's going to shut people down right away. So the best thing to do if you have a best friend or a partner or a family member that you're wishing was more fitness oriented is just to be a good example. Live your life and show them how being fit and eating well and committing to a healthy lifestyle improves your happiness, improves your well-being, just makes you a more energized and fun person to be around. And chances are eventually they're going to ask, hey, what are you doing? How can I look better and feel more energized? So just being a good example, A, and B, you really just have to sometimes audit the people that you're spending time with. So again, this might be another example of a sunk cost fallacy. Just because you have best friends that you've hung out with since college that you have always liked to drink with, if they are not having engaging conversations, they're not the growth minded people that you want to spend time with, they're not treating their bodies the way that you want to treat your body, it's okay to let people go and to move on to new friendships. And it doesn't have to be like a breakup. Obviously, you can still spend time with your best drinking friends from college, but the more you adopt a fitness oriented lifestyle and the more your life becomes busy with family and with work and with working out, the more you have to be really strict with who you spend your time with. So doing an audit of what people make me feel engaged and spending more time with them and what people drag me down and spending less time with them is another good way to go about things.
Yeah. This is one where, and everything you said, I agree with. This is one where I have maybe like to some people it would seem like I have less tolerance for, but this is one where I'm just like I'm going to I'm going to distance myself pretty quickly if I can tell that someone is an anchor, not a propeller, right? And just some like very like explicit examples of this is like you sit down to have breakfast or dinner or brunch or whatever, you don't order a drink, and someone is going to throw a comment like, "Oh, you're not drinking? Like, are you on a diet? Are you doing something weird?" And it's like we've come to such a bad place in our culture that not choosing to do something that is negative for you is weird, right? If I'm trying to save for a house, right, and I go to um, wherever with some friends and they're like, "Oh, you're not gambling?" And it's like, "No, like I'm trying to be responsible with my money." They're going to like that for some reason makes more sense than being like, "Oh, no, like I'm trying to improve myself because I've had really negative self-talk, I've slept really poorly, my joints have been feeling really bad and it's impacting every single area of my life. So I'm trying to make this decision." Yet you're going to get, people making comments for that. And you just got to remember that when people, and you made a really good point, Jake, where you said, don't preach to them because that is repellent, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all know someone who's like this, like over the top, multi-level marketer, religious type, or someone that is just like shaming you basically for not getting in line. That is the most unattractive thing you can do.
Yep.
Do not do that. However, if you are living your life in a way that is attractive, and this is where I like to use the metaphor of the moon and the moon pulls the tide. The tide does not pull the moon. When you are living in alignment and congruence with who you want to be, that is attractive. You will become the moon in the relationship, and they will be attracted and pulled towards you. Now, there's a balance to this. You don't want to just only take from them, allow them to influence you back and forth, and you can create a little bit more magnetic of a relationship. But ultimately, live your life how you want to live it. People will be attracted to that because most people aren't living the life that they want to live. And so, because you are certain and you have confidence about who you are and who you want to be, and most people are not, leading to them falling for things that they don't actually want to do, you're going to be attractive in that way. And so, to wrap all of this up, how to navigate in a community that doesn't understand having athletic goals, you just got to understand, is this someone that is an anchor or is it a propeller? Can I be the moon that pulls the tide with this person? Or are they going to be a negative detractor that is going to ultimately do everything they can to pull me back down the ladder that I'm trying to climb out of? And if they are pulling you down the ladder, that's someone to distance yourself from. If they are not pulling you down the ladder, eventually you will moon tide them in the relationship and they will be attracted to what you're doing. But just a good example of this is, let's say it's Saturday morning, and or not Saturday, yeah, Saturday morning, but your friends are like, let's get together for brunch. You're like, great, let's go do a class, let's go work out, and then we'll go get food after. You're now dictating the environment and being someone that is essentially being the moon in this situation, as opposed to like, okay, what do you think we should do? Oh, well, the Steelers are playing the Bengals. Let's go get hammered and then we'll go golfing and then we'll go, do brunch with whatever, right? Like, go be the decision maker, set the standard, and then from there go get drinks after, you do your workout and kind of find that balance. Sorry, that was a
Yeah.
long-winded one, but just a lot of thoughts.
Yeah. And I think that another thing I would point out is how often in social settings do people go, well, I don't care what we do. I don't know what we want to do. It's really not as hard as it might seem to be that decision maker. If you're someone who has ideas and you throw out ideas, you're probably going to find it easier than you think for people to jump on board. So if you're someone who's health centric and you have ideas about how to do group activities that are going to be active or go places to eat that are going to fit your goals, people are usually going to follow along because not a lot of people in groups want to be that decision maker. And so that's another way to be a good example for people.
Yeah, love that one. There's one other thing that stood out to me, and it's escaping me, but I love the point that you just made about like I said, most people don't want to be the leader, essentially.
Mhm.
And that's kind of like what you're doing in this community is you're being a leader and just saying like, hey, here's what I want to do. Here's how I want to do it. I'm really hoping that that other thing comes to me because it was a really good point. But if not, no worries. I'm sure I'll say it at some point in another podcast.
I was
Um,
just reminded, like one of the oldest sayings in the book is those who mind don't matter and those who matter don't mind.
yeah.
So again, just think about the people that you're surrounding yourself with are, like you said, are they pulling you up or are they dragging you down?
Yeah, it came to me. A lot of times too, we're projecting that they don't
Absolutely.
understand, or they're projecting that they're judging us, or they're projecting that they don't look up to us, unless they have explicitly said, "What are you doing? You're dumb. Stop doing this." Right? You have inserted what they are thinking, what they are saying for you. So either have a conversation with them, or try assuming, oh, like they're so like inspired by how I'm eating this breakfast. They probably like love watching me eat this, tasty omelet with a coffee while they drink their margaritas or whatever. Like everything's true if that's what you believe.
Absolutely. Yeah. We can create stories in our head really easily. Just run away with that.
Yeah, I do that all the time. It's something you just got to keep reminding yourself, like, what is the actual truth? Sweet dude, this has been super fun, and this is something we'll do every single week for those listening. Thanks for listening to the Mindful Muscle podcast. Be sure and join the Facebook group Mindful Muscle, and you can get that link below. You'll also be able to find that in our social media channels, the link to that. Ask questions, get them answered on here. We can also answer the questions in the group if we see you post them in there as well. And then, as a reminder, we got the mini course that you can get access to. Dive a little bit deeper into some of the dive a little bit deeper into some of the topics that we discussed today. And then if you're in the Seattle area, Fuller NutriFuel, 15% off discount when you use Paul15 at checkout. Get your meals delivered to your door. so that you don't have to think about it and you can live your life and do cool things other than frying fish. And I'm not much of a cooker, so I kind of talk like, nah, I don't want to do that. Like, how can I do this quick and easy? But anyway, thank you for listening to the podcast. Jake, thanks for the time. And we'll catch you
Yeah,
guys
thanks,
next time
Paul.
on the Mindful Muscle podcast.